The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, America. Good morning, world. Good morning, CHD. Welcome once again. My name is Michael Kane. I am the Director of Advocacy here at Children's Health Defense. Today, we have one of the best appointments Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has made to date. John Gilmore has been appointed to an autism committee called the Interagency Autism Coordinating Committee. John is a dear friend of mine and mentor, and we are going to be talking about what is this committee, what does this mean, and after that, the quiet federal takeover of your neighborhood with Miriam Eckenfels, attorney Scott McCullough, and Risa Evans. The 5G cell tower takeover of our neighborhoods and destruction of local control is a critical issue in 2026. Everybody needs to pay attention to it. Thankfully, I'm seeing the CHD audience is flocking to this, and we need to continue to do that. So we got another great show for you. Stay tuned for the whole thing. But first, as always, we have some headlines. Man, we got some headlines. What an announcement yesterday. The CDC is changing the vaccine schedule for children. Here's the headline: breaking, HHS makes sweeping changes to childhood vaccine schedule. On a Monday in the middle of the news cycle, this broke. You know, it's funny, I've been talking to John Gilmore and others about how these announcements have always been coming on Fridays at 6 p.m. They've been kind of sneaking them in when there's good news for medical freedom. Not this one. This one came Monday, right in the middle of the cycle. Fascinating. From some 84 injections, which were currently recommended, down to around 30 now. Now, I hear some people saying like, well, this isn't enough. Well, it's a lot. So thank you so much, Secretary Kennedy. Thank you to the director of the CDC, Jim O'Neill, for implementing this. Man, just really Happy New Year to all. What an amazing way to kick it back. Speaking of Happy New Year, Bayer, Monsanto, they lose a round in the fight for legal immunity of pesticides, but more battles lie ahead. Yesterday, also, Section 453 of the Appropriations Bill, which would have effectively given a liability shield to pesticide manufacturers, was removed from the bill. This is a huge deal because for months and months and months, the MAHA movement has been pushing to get rid of this. Now, it is not over. There is a Supreme Court case being held. Oh, yeah. So this broke on social media. MAHA Action put this out, and Children's Health Defense had a tweet that caught a lot of attention on this as well, too. It was trending on Twitter yesterday, on X. Now, as I was saying, there is a Supreme Court case happening this Friday, and I know some MAHA activists are planning to do walks at the Supreme Court. We'll try to get the information on that and post that on our social media platforms, possibly at The Defender. If you're in the DC DMV area, think about being at the Supreme Court, because there's a case that might give immunity to the pesticide makers, a way to work around the fact that Congress won't do it. We also have issues at the EPA with Secretary Lee Zeldin that still need to be addressed too. But when you win one, you got to take the victory lap. So congratulations to the MAHA movement on that. I'm very proud of Elizabeth Kucinich, did a lot of leadership there. Zen Honeycutt, Merrill Nass, Mary Holland at Children's Health Defense, Stands for Health Freedom, and on and on and on. I know I'm missing organizations, have done great work on that. Are you a New York City fired unvaccinated worker? I am. Well, we are going to have a Zoom this Thursday at 8 p.m. to update you on lawsuits for the fired unvaccinated workers and the reinstatement process. There was a reinstatement process announced by former Mayor Eric Adams in New York City, but it has stalled. We have some information on this. Register for this Zoom. You could go to teachersforchoice.org or teachersforchoice.substack.com, and we have a registration link for you. Make sure to see this Attorney Sujata Gibson will be there, and we might also have Attorney Christina Martinez there to go through what is the legal landscape for fired unvaccinated workers and what do we need to do to get our jobs back. Amy, over at her Substack, posted a good article about this. Reinstatement rule change, vote by New York State Civil Service Commission delayed. And we're going to get into what the updates are beyond that. And then also, actually, Lou, put the other one back that I skipped on accident. First, they came for the teachers on the front lines of freedom. Kane versus City of New York, formerly Kane versus de Blasio, the plaintiffs were denied by SCOTUS in a vaccine mandate case, but the legal battle continues. So that was my federal claims were denied, but it is not over. That's why you want to register for this Zoom to make sure you get all of the updated information. At Children's Health Defense right now, Hawaii is a national priority. Massachusetts, New Jersey, and Hawaii, because all of them have been identified as having their religious exemptions to vaccination at risk in this legislative session. There is a 5-island tour happening in Hawaii right now. Robert Malone is one of the speakers, and he just tweeted about this. Robert Malone, Jimmy Dore, Mickey Willis, Dr. Ryan Cole, and local activists are going island to island to talk about keeping vaccinations optional. There's a ballot initiative that is being run by activists in Hawaii on the county level, and they will be talking about that. In Children's Health Defense, we appreciate this initiative in education and in spirit. But this cannot protect the religious exemption. The religious exemption is a state law, and if it's repealed by state law, there is no county law or initiative that can stop that. So I just want everyone to know you should go to hi.childrenshealthdefense.org for information about this. That's the Hawaii chapter site, hi.childrenshealthdefense.org. We are going to continue with updates. The Hawaii session begins January 21st, I believe, and this is going to, listen, we don't need, you're like, I don't care about Hawaii. Yes, you do. We don't need any state losing their religious exemption in 2026. That's why this is a national priority and why we are keeping our eyes very close on all of this. Before I go to John Gilmore to have a conversation I'm really excited to have, I've been waiting for this conversation with John. I just saw this video from a national Lawyers Guild. There it is. NACDL, National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. Police can now see your bank accounts and location history anytime when they pull you over in their car because they have Palantir. Let's show this reel.
How many people have seen a police program that's being used called Palantir? It is in your police officer's car on your police officer's computer. So while you've got the person pulled over, you can start to drill down on this person. It's not just like a DMV photo and an NCIC anymore. You can see all their bank accounts, the balance in their bank accounts, the last times they declared cash somewhere. You can see every time they hit a flock camera anywhere in the country. Flock is a giant national traffic monitoring system that is basically everywhere now. And they're taking photographs at every intersection all day. And it's using AI to like read license plates and put identities of people places. And it's just keeping all that data, like all of it. That's what they've got in their car right now. And we're not getting that in discovery. We're not able to confront it. And we're not able to use it as Brady evidence. We've got Fourth Amendment issues galore, obviously. I didn't realize how prevalent it was. There has never been a surveillance program in the history of the United States that was not used brutally and in a corrupt fashion. And now we have the biggest surveillance system that we've ever had.
There has never been a surveillance system in America that was not used brutally and corruptly. Man, that's, I don't know why that reel surprised me. Before the show, Attorney Scott McCullough was saying, Mike, you're surprised? I shouldn't be, but there's something about that reel that really strikes a chord in me. And after we talk to John, when we have Miriam on and everyone talking about the EMR and the wireless tech, this dovetails right into what they are talking about, the control grid, the surveillance society. Okay, but with that, it is my honor and privilege to introduce my good friend, the president of Autism Action Network, John Gilmore. John, thanks so much for joining us today.
Well, thanks a lot for having me, Michael. It's good to see you. Happy New Year. Happy New Year
Yeah,
to you
I
guys
mean,
out there too.
yeah, it's just really exciting. You were appointed by Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to be a part of the Interagency Autism Coordinating Committee.
That's right.
Now, this committee has a history to it. In fact, the one of the main founders of Children's Health Defense, Lynn Redwood, used to be a member of it. Why don't you talk to us a little bit
Yes,
about the
she was.
history? Yeah.
Okay, so this committee was created in the year 2000, and it consists of the heads of various departments and offices and things like that in the federal government that have some sort of responsibility with dealing with autism. And then there's appointed people from the public. I'm one of the people who's appointed from the public. And it's supposed to put together a plan and guide autism policy to some extent in the federal agency. Uh, from my perspective, I think the really valuable thing about this for myself and what I want to get do in our community is that it gives a bully pulpit, right? And they haven't released the names of the people officially who are going to be on the committee, but I do know a fair number of them already, which I will keep to myself right now. But it's a great group of dedicated activists who've been in the trenches for years and really know their stuff. So, and which gets to my point that I think the real value of this is it's going to be a real bully pulpit to move the agenda forward, and it's never really been that, right? Since its inception, it's always kind of been a rubber stamp for whatever the prevailing policy was in the federal government. They're never rocking the boat. They've actually sort of set us back in a lot of ways over the years that we can get into. But fortunately, one of the people who was on the committee for many, many years, just sort of valiantly trying to uh, get them to realistically deal with what's going on with autism, for that time period, was Lynn Redwood. Just an amazing, amazing activist. She was one of the founders of CHD and the World Mercury Project. She's just been in the trenches probably since the mid 90s, and I have unlimited respect for Lynn and what she's accomplished over the years. And I think for over 10 years, she was on the committee going up there, meeting after meeting, report after report, speaking truth to power. And, what I think we're going to have now is basically a whole group of people who are essentially Lynn Redwood's students up there, and hopefully we're going to be able to get done the agenda that I think she was really fighting for all those years. So it's really very exciting here.
That
So
must John, that must have been a brutal 10 years for Lynn, because that was a very, very unfriendly committee to anyone as
brutal.
smart and as intelligent and on the right side of history as Lynn was.
She is a very dedicated, tough person,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, it's just amazing. Just shout
and
out to Lynn
just
Redwood. Yeah.
total props to Lynn.
And so John, there's a couple questions I have, but one is that I heard there is going to be non-speakers appointed to this committee, individuals
Yes,
who have
yes.
autism, who
That
have been profoundly impacted, and that has been lacking over the years. Why don't you talk about that a little?
that is really crucial. All right. Um, I know of two non-speaking individuals who have profound autism, but they can communicate through either
Right.
keyboards or letterboards or so on. And what these two individuals show is that many people who have been sort of written off as being intellectually challenged are not. Okay, they are just in a body that does not
Yes.
work very well at all, does not communicate with the brain. The brain doesn't, the body will not do what the brain says, right? And I know a couple of them. Again, I can't really name names here, but they're going to be stellar additions to this committee. And I have no shortage of opinions, and I think it's long overdue. There have been people with autism on the committee in the past. I won't name names, but they came definitely from uh, the group of people who basically take an identity politics viewpoint of autism. They tended to be very high functioning people who have, who are can speak, who can live independently. Some of them have advanced degrees, um, and their viewpoint is that autism is just a natural state of human beings, right? And that there's nothing wrong with autism. It's, which is sort of weird because it's sometimes they're saying, well, there's nothing wrong with autism, but at the same time, it's a disability that we need services and so on, right? And they're very adverse to anything that they said would change people with autism. This is including healthcare, okay? This is including like really necessary medical treatments that people with autism need for the whole range of physical problems that huge portions of the autism community have, such as GI issues, epilepsy, dyspraxia, OCDs. There's just the whole gamut. And their argument was we don't have to change, the world has to change, right? And that argument was, music to the ears of the people who knew full well that there are environmental causes of autism, including vaccines, right?
Exactly.
All right. If there's nothing wrong with autism, then we don't have to worry about that. We don't really have to look into what's causing autism. We don't have to look into really what the biology is. We just got to sort of, come up with a flag, and we need to celebrate Autism Month, right? And we need to change the name of the Combating Autism Act, the first real bill that devoted resources to autism research back in '07. We need to change the Combating Autism Act to the Autism Cares Act. You know, oh, wasn't that sweet? Autism Cares, right? It was, uh, it was a very well supported, sophisticated effort to divert attention to where it really needed to be, right? I mean, I think a lot of the work that this committee has done, just like it has been in, much of the established institutional world, is to divert, delay, distract, and deny what's going on, right? And I think what hopefully what's going to happen with this appointments that are coming forward is, at least as far as this committee is concerned, that's going to end. Okay.
So, John, I want to talk a little bit about this divert and distraction issue, because I think there's a really important messaging issue here. We really need to make sure we are being very distinct between profound autism,
Right.
people, like you said, who are trapped in their bodies with
Right.
so much more capacity than we know, compared to what used to be called Asperger's, what might be quirkiness, right? Because with some of these people, that I think Asperger's is still a valid diagnosis.
Sure.
Really strange that they got rid of that one when it served a
Right.
good purpose.
Right.
I think that some of those people are being manipulated or believe, if you want to get rid of autism, you want to get rid of me. This is a
Right.
genocide. And
Right.
we need to be so cautious that we don't walk into that, because of course that's not what we're saying,
No.
but it's just a messaging thing that they want us to trip up on any chance they get. And you
Right.
see it on the mainstream media all the time. They've been running this message all year.
Right. I mean, you bring up a lot of really, really important issues, right? And I think one of the things that we have to deal with is that we have been pretending for a long time that, the young person, who toe walks and has no effective means of communication and has a whole range of really serious disabilities, that condition that we call autism is basically the same, just a matter of degree, to people who have sort of social interaction anxiety, and and get diagnosed at the age of 40, and they're saying that's autism as well.
Hey,
Right
John, I
now,
think
what I'm
you
saying,
told me, Jerry Seinfeld said he's
he
autistic.
kind of put it out there that he did, right? And then there was a big flap, and he at least had the grace to say, I'm Sorry about that. I really don't, you know. But there's other people out there, you know, just as not autistic who sort of claim to have it, right? But now
Interesting.
what I'm saying is that they're you know the people with the profound autism diagnosis aren't the only ones we have to worry about. I'm not dismissing that there's a whole range of
Right.
issues people have. And I think the reason why there's a whole range of issues is because there's a whole range of causes to autism as well as severity, right?
Yes.
And we need to analyze that, right? And, you know, one of the important, to relate this back to the committee, one of the things that the committee does, it's responsible coming up for this report, you know, a major report about what the federal government is doing about autism. And I'm looking at the current one and some of the huge issues facing people with autism aren't even mentioned, right? It doesn't say anything about epidemiology. It doesn't say anything about regression. It doesn't even admit regression results. And we know from
Wow.
study after study that anywhere between a quarter to a half, depending on the study, of the people who have autism develop normally as a child for a while, and then all of a sudden something happens and they start losing skills. Sometimes it's like in a matter of days, sometimes it's over a longer period of time, but that's regression, right? And then there are some people with autism who seem to have it from birth on, right? And we still have people getting NIH grants who will say there's no such thing as regression. This is
Wow.
insane, right? And so I think one of the things that we need to do is we need to start breaking this down into what the biological causes are for this group of things that we cause autism, you know? And uh, so far, the only thing that the federal government has really put any resources into about the autism causation is looking at genetics, right? For a long time, they said, oh, we're going to go find the autism gene, right? As if it was like an inherited genetic disorder, right? And at first, they thought there was going to be like one gene. And they looked and looked and looked, and they couldn't find the one gene. They said, well, maybe it's more than one gene, maybe it's two or three. Well, maybe it's five, maybe it's 10. Now they're saying it's thousands of genes. Okay. Okay, what that means is there is a genetic component to it, but this isn't an inherited type of disease. I think that like hemophilia, you know, because anytime you look at one of the sort of indicator genes, it never causes autism in everybody who has it, right? Another thing that they're talking about in the genetic world is, oh, there's all these what they call de novo mutations. Okay, that means they are finding a gene that is mutated in some way, okay? And they think it's causing autism, but it's not inherited, and it's not. It's a brand new. De novo means new, right? And so one of the sort of tricks that I think they've kind of done is they try and pretend that genetics means the same thing as inherited. I think most people, when they say a genetic cause, say think it's inherited, right? You get it from your parents or one of your parents, right? And what the de novo thing seems to indicate is that we're getting things in the environment are causing genetic damage to people that's resulting in this range of symptoms that we label as autism, right?
Yeah.
And that's worth study and so on. But up to this point, the last time I checked with the figures that are public at this point, for every for every $15 spent on researching genes, $1 has been spent on everything else.
Wow.
Okay, that's got to change. That's got to change, right?
Well, so, you brought up NIH grants, you brought them going to specific areas. You actually had the honor and privilege after getting this appointment of speaking to the new director of NIH, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya.
Right.
Maybe my second favorite pick after you, maybe Bobby J. U. Over in DC right now. And you were able to talk to him about some of this stuff, and he showed a lot of interest. Why don't you tell
He
us what
did.
you can about that interaction?
Well, basically, I met them at this event, and we were talking, and I came from the perspective of a parent of a vaccine injured young man. He's 26 years old, who is on the severe end of it, My son had no effective means of communication until the last couple of years when he started to be able to use a letterboard to communicate with us. He's got a lot of issues, right? And what I told to the secretary, well, I guess he's not the secretary, I guess. Let's just call him
Director.
Jay, right?
I think he's the director, I think, yeah.
What I said is like, all right, in my son's lifetime, okay, there is nothing new that helps parents and people dealing with autism. There's not a single new treatment. There's not nothing. All right. When my son was diagnosed, he was diagnosed very young. He was diagnosed when he was like 16 months old, right? Because he was so severe and he had such a profound regression, right? That was in 2000, right? 2001. Back then, they thought the autism rate was somewhere between 1 out of 500 kids, maybe 1 out of 1,000 kids, right? And that was the result of 15 years of really serious, obvious growth in the number of people with autism. Back in the early 80s, it was like 1 in 10,000, okay? So here we are, 25 years later. As you said earlier today, the recognized autism rate now is 1 out of 31 8-year-olds. Okay. However, the CDC, the NIH, the FDA will not claim that the autism rate has actually gone up. And I think that's a huge problem. We're in the midst, and have been for almost 2 generations now, of an incredible epidemic, right? And they refuse to recognize it, right? And every 2 years, there's this thing called the ADDM. Okay, it's one of the tools that they use to track how many people they think have autism. It measures the 8-year-olds, right? Every 2 years, they come out with a number. Every 2 years, there's about a 20 to 25% increase from the previous number, right? And every 2 years for the last 20 odd years that they've been doing this, they say the exact same thing, okay? Well, we're not sure if it's a real increase or not, okay? It could be better case finding. It could be changes in the diagnostic criteria, right? And there's a certain legitimacy to it, but they always escape the fact that about 30 to 40% of the people with an autism diagnosis are on the profound end of it, like my son is. And those kids who you can't possibly miss. I mean, if you're with my son, you're going to figure out within a minute that he's got some serious issues. These were not the kids that they didn't recognize were autism back in elementary school. That would be like, that'd be not recognizing the Grand Canyon when you're standing at the edge of it, right? But the number of those people have increased faster than the overall numbers for decades, right? And what they don't tell you is with the ADDM, it is not designed, okay, to tell you whether the number is really going up or not. And they refuse to do that epidemiology, right? And it's clear why they're not doing it, because if they actually said, gee, folks, this is a real increase, okay? This has gone up like many orders of magnitude over the last generation, and we have done essentially nothing about it.
Nothing,
okay?
yeah.
But that's where we are. That's where we are. Right?
So, John, we have to wrap up now. We're out of time for this segment. Everybody should check John out at autismactionnetwork.org. Follow, get on his email list. If you're in New York, shame on you if you're not on it. You must be on it. But everyone in the nation should be on, because he breaks news. He gets so much information, and is now part of a committee that used to be almost useless. And I'm pretty sure that's about to change in 2026. John Gilmore, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us today.
Thanks a lot, Michael. Appreciate it. Happy New Year.
Excellent. That's a big win for me that John Gilmore is in this position. Thank you so much, Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., for that. And with that, don't go anywhere, because now we have to talk about what is happening in the space of EMR, how they are trying to completely destroy local control and take away even the little crumbs that we have to defend ourselves. And I turn it over now to Miriam Eckenfels.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to another EMR and Wireless segment. My name is Miriam Eckenfels. I am the director of CHD's EMR and Wireless program. Happy New Year, everyone. Today we are, unfortunately, again talking about the push of the federal government, namely the FCC and Congress, to take away local control over cell tower placement. As I'm sure all of you know by now, the FCC proposed new rules and Congress is advancing legislation that would essentially federalize the approval process of cell towers and antennas and allow big telecom to plaster the country with wireless infrastructure without much of an opportunity by local communities to object. This is a fundamental shift of how things are done currently. And we are staunchly opposed to both the new proposed rules by the FCC and the bills moving through Congress. Because we believe that people must have a say in where cell towers are placed in their neighborhoods. Why? Because this infrastructure is harmful to the health and the environment. It emits RF radiation that is known to have significant health impacts, and it affects nearby property values. It also has a range of other negative impacts. But we have seen time and time again that people who live close to a cell tower get sick. Their environment changes. Some of them have to leave their homes even. So this notion that we, the people, should have no say where cell towers are placed close to our homes and schools is an absolute no-go for us. So over the past month, we ran action alerts targeting members of Congress and the FCC. And those alerts are still open. If you have not taken them, please do so ASAP and share on your social and spread the word. We still need more people to get involved. But we've also learned a lot more about what it is that these bills that Congress is advancing actually do and how bad they really are. We have also submitted official comments to the FCC docket for the new proposed rules, arguing why these rules must be rejected. And to talk about both of those things, I am now joined by our very own legal team, Scott McCullough, our lead litigator, and Risa Evans, one of our terrific staff attorneys. Welcome to both of you.
Good morning, everyone.
Hi, Miriam. Hi, Scott.
Hey, Scott, let's start with you. As I mentioned, we submitted these official comments. What did we argue in our comments, and why do we feel that these new proposed rules are really not up to the FCC to adopt?
There's a long list, far more than what we could get into in this segment. Let me try to boil it all down. The commission is basically intending, as you noted, to federalize local permitting. It wants to turn itself into a nationwide zoning authority, at least behind the scenes. It still will technically require a local permit, but it would take away almost all of the discretion that local jurisdictions have, and participatory rights, and consideration of adverse impacts. Their hands would be tied completely. It'd be a rubber stamp process. There's two parts. They actually propose some specific rules for what we call minor modifications or eligible facilities. Congress passed a statute several years ago that said that if a cell tower provider wants to slightly modify a facility, say replace older equipment with new equipment, then the local jurisdiction shall approve it. What the commission is trying to do is gut the limitations in what is shall approve by basically turning any modification, no matter how big, how large, how much impact it may have, into a minor modification. Then the commission asks a series of questions where it's pretty clear where they want to go and what they intend to do. As noted, it basically limits all zoning authority, local zoning authority, There'd be very strict rules on local the jurisdiction can do. It would impose very rigid shot clock requirements. In other words, a very limited period of time during which the local jurisdiction can act on it. And if it does not act within that very short window, then the application is deemed approved, no matter how bad the proposal is. It would prevent denial based on adverse visual or their other aesthetic effects. It would eliminate the ability of the local jurisdictions to require demonstration of need for mobile phone service, and that it is the best or least worst alternative. It would establish a closed door mediation session. If the local jurisdiction is pushing back, the wireless company could drag them to a closed door proceeding at the FCC to the exclusion of the public and basically impose its desired outcome on them. It would eliminate consideration of impacts on those nearby, including property values, or the fact that whenever a cell tower goes up next door to someone, they either lose their insurance or have to pay a lot more for it. Very tight limit on permit fees, effectively be requiring that any meaningful inquiry, which does cost money, would either not be done, or if done, the cost of it would be shifted to others, those nearby. Other folks looking for a permit, like say you want to put an addition on your house just burned down in a fire, your permit fee is going to go up because they're artificially keeping the wireless permit fees down. Then finally, in a really interesting section, the commission is proposing to preempt state AI laws, which have been implemented in several states to protect people's privacy and protect children. They just think that, states shouldn't be involved in this newfangled AI. We've all heard about the potential dangers of it. And the FCC just wants to basically say states and local jurisdictions can't do anything about AI when a wireless company is using it for its network or its services.
So interesting. So, I mean, to sum it up, what they're essentially doing is shutting the public out and eliminating anything that industry has to prove in order to be able to put cell towers where they want. Risa, let's talk about the bills, because the bills pretty much mirror, sort of like the NPRM, and maybe you can talk a little bit more about what's in it. But there's a particular point that I want us to talk about, and that's sort of like the elimination of the coverage gap analysis. So under current law and rules, the telecom provider has to prove that this tower is actually needed, because I want to remind everyone that all of this is done in the name of closing the digital divide, of providing access to, broadband internet service. And so, but with eliminating the coverage gap analysis, now we're not talking about connectivity. We're really talking about just densifying a network. So Risa, talk to us about how that's reflected in the bills, and what, I know last time we spoke, you were, pointing on certain points of the bill, but now we know a lot more. So tell us about that.
Sure. Yeah. Well, first of all, like you said, I mean, a lot of what's in these bills kind of mirrors what's in the NPRM that Scott was just talking about, but attempts to do through legislation what the NPRM is attempting to do through rulemaking and, administrative processes. Like the NPRM, these bills, especially HR 2289, which is the sort of big omnibus bill, are proposing to eviscerate state and local control over the placement and construction and modification of wireless facilities. And HR 2289 also proposes to eliminate federal environmental and historic preservation review for these facilities, for many kinds of wireless projects. But, and so, just the upshot is that if the bills pass, we can expect rapid proliferation of new wireless facilities in the worst places that you can imagine, anywhere and everywhere, on rooftops, next to schools, in rural neighborhoods, you name it, with terrible consequences for, as you noted earlier, for human health and privacy, as well as a host of other interests like community character, property values, view sheds, town budgets, flora, fauna, the environment. I mean, the list goes on. And in particular, one of the details in the bills is that it does eliminate the ability of localities when they're looking at proposed projects to require companies to show that there's a coverage gap and that the proposed facility is sort of the best and least intrusive way of addressing that coverage gap. And so what that means, and what the bill says, is that basically companies now sort of have a right to not only provide coverage, but to improve and enhance coverage, and communities can't object on those grounds. So what this means is that basically a company can come into a town and put small cells at very close intervals, regardless of whether a community wants them or needs them for effective coverage. So it really is a very big shift. And there are other shifts too, that procedural and sort of substantive things that really eliminate the power that localities do have and really transfer that power to the companies who with their proposals can sort of decide where they want to put things, and there's not a lot that communities will be able to do to push back.
Yeah, it's just a very dire situation.
Yeah.
Do you think it will be worse if the bills passed as opposed to the rules? Because, we're fighting both and we're very engaged in advocacy against both, but sort of like it's a different process, right? Executive agency rulemaking versus Congress. Would it be worse if we had these bills pass, and why?
Well, I mean, one thing is that, if Congress passes a bill doing all these things, there are arguments with respect to the NPRM that the FCC doesn't actually have the authority under existing telecommunications law to do some of the things that it's trying to do under the NPRM. But if Congress tries to do those things, then that argument sort of goes away, because it will be, it'll be federal statutory law as opposed to administrative law. So that's certainly one way that the bills would be, sort of tougher to address, because it gets rid of that argument.
So Scott, I want to follow up on that. Do we, I know we argue in our submission that the FCC exceeds its authority, and do we think Congress exceeds its authority with the bill under the Constitution?
There are significant arguments that the Congress can't do many of the things it is proposing to do. Don't want to get too legally hyper-technical, but the Communications Act is premised on what we call the Commerce Clause of the Constitution. And I think there are serious arguments that some of the provisions that are before Congress right now exceed the federal statutory power under the Commerce Clause. It very much intrudes on traditional state prerogatives, what we call the police power. And I don't think that the Commerce Clause allows Congress to do many of the things it does. One of the main areas is human health and properties. In many respects, what the FCC and Congress are doing ultimately is taking away individual rights guaranteed by the Bill of Rights to the Constitution, specifically the Fifth Amendment, but also some of the others. And I have significant doubt whether Congress can, acting under the Commerce Clause, basically take people's property, or on the health side, force people to be exposed without informed consent to a harmful toxin. So it takes property, and since it makes people sick and injures them, it imposes personal injuries. There's no method in any of these proposed bills for people who are injured, either in their property sense or in the personal injury sense, to go anywhere and get compensation or recompense for it I think there's a real constitutional argument. Now, having said that, what Risa said is correct. We are far better off, as bad as the FCC proposals are, in the context of arguing that the FCC under its existing statute can't do these things. If Congress does it, it takes away the within statutory authorization argument and leaves us basically only with constitutional arguments, harder arguments to make. Courts are very wary about declaring federal statutes unconstitutional.
Right. And so that just underscores the importance of everyone participating, reaching out to their federal officials. Right now, the bills are in the House, so to the representatives, but they will move to the Senate once it passes the House. The action alerts that we have live point you towards your representatives. It's easy, 1-2 clicks. We have so far through the action alert submitted, I think, close to 100,000 emails throughout Congress. And so it's very important that we keep up the pressure and really let our elected officials know that we are not on board with that. And, let's also not forget and talk a moment about that this entire push by Congress and the FCC comes in light of the FCC still not having complied with the 2021 court order to revisit its RF exposure guidelines. So, Scott, how can the FCC do that without even complying with the court order?
That's a really good question. 4 years ago, the DC Circuit Court of Appeals told the FCC to re-examine its exposure guidelines. Everybody in the audience has heard us many times say that the science is clear now. This stuff is a harmful toxin, at least at the exposure limits as they currently exist. And the DC Circuit recognized that there were real problems with the existing guidelines, and they told the FCC 4 years ago to take another look at it and potentially change them so that they reflected biological reality. The commission has refused to do what the court told it to do. And we think, and we have told the commission this twice now within the last 2 months, that it is not just illegal, but it is also irresponsible and irrational to open these floodgates, allowing this widespread deployment of harmful facilities at the same time as it is known that those facilities are making people sick. So, what we told the commission and what we are telling Congress too is that they should be doing none of these things until they finally fix the exposure guidelines. Don't open these floodgates when we know all that it will do is flood local residential areas, schools, other very important places where people and especially children are, making them sick, and then giving them no means to either avoid it or obtain compensation or any other kind of remedy when they have been made sick or chased out of their homes.
Right. And isn't it kind of remarkable that you have like a court essentially telling a federal agency, hey, there's a problem there, you need to address this, and the federal agency is just like, yeah, no, I don't. It's really like just such an example of how dysfunctional this entire regime is. So, Risa, throughout the NPRM submission, you worked a lot with local jurisdictions, right? Because the people are not the only ones impacted.
Yeah.
Local jurisdictions are as well, because they're, essentially taking all of their power away and make it impossible for them to essentially comply with these federal rules. And so what was sort of like the response or the sentiment that you got from local jurisdictions that you were in touch with? And what are local jurisdictions saying in their comments that they have submitted?
Yeah. So, what we've looked at so far is, obviously, this is not good for local zoning boards and other, local bodies that have to deal with permit applications for wireless facilities. And And in fact, the proposed bills, I think, are even worse than the NPRM in that they require officials to, act on these very, very condensed timelines, the shot clock timelines that Scott spoke of earlier, and says that, proposals are deemed automatically approved if local officials don't make a decision and issue a written decision explaining what they did and why they did on the very same day that they made the decision within the shot clock. If that doesn't happen, then the facilities are deemed approved and they're automatically allowed, no matter how awful the proposals are. So local officials are going to be in a really tough spot because they're going to have to put these proposals at the top of the pile, no matter what other projects they're having to, other things in the community they're having to deal with. This is what they're going to have to deal with first. And even then, they won't be able to do stuff in the timelines that are allotted. And so what we've seen so far from, local, associations of like mayors, things like that, is pretty much universally opposed to these rules because they really, in addition to sort of taking a lot of substantive power away, they also just, the NPRM imposes such strict procedural guidelines are going to be impossible to meet. And then the local officials are basically going to be the ones who people are going to complain to after these terrible projects go in because, they're the people who have to stamp the approval. So generally what we've seen, everybody's opposed to this. And I would urge with respect to the bills, we haven't done a push on this. We communicated with localities about the NPRM, but I would urge individuals also to contact, your local zoning boards, your local officials who may not be aware of these bills and suggest to them that they contact your federal representatives to let them know that they really should be voting against, especially 2289, but really all of these bills. Because very, very important, I think a lot of local officials, they don't necessarily have a pulse on federal bills, and so really important to apprise them of what's going on.
Absolutely. And for a summary of all of the different actions that people can take, everyone can go to childrenshd.org/stop cell towers. That's childrenshd.org/stop cell towers. And all of the alerts, everything is there. And I think what Risa just said is a really, really important point, because if we think this entire scenario through in practice, right? Local authorities are not going to stop processing other matters, right? So they're not going to be able to just prioritize all of the cell tower applications to comply with the shot clock. So what's the much more likely scenario is that you're just going to look at deemed approved for shot clock violations. And that is just a very dangerous scenario. And also, the elimination of the notice requirement. So you as a person who lives close to a cell tower or a small cell, not getting notice, you won't even be able to follow up with your municipality to make sure they comply with the shot clock. So it just puts this unreasonable burden on local jurisdictions, and it makes it impossible for people who oppose cell towers to have any say. So it's really important that we mount an effective opposition to both these terrible bills and the NPRM. Thank you both for coming on today and talking to our viewers about it. And thank you for all you do for the program and for this cause. Very much appreciated. And for our viewers, again, go to childrenshd.org/stop cell towers and take action and share with your friends, with your family, on your social media. Follow us on our social media accounts at Stop5G Near Me on all major channels, and go to 704nomore.org and enter your email into the subscribe box so that you can get being kept up to date on the happenings, the action items, and what needs to be done. Thank you everyone for watching, and now stay tuned for the People's Study story of the day. Bye everyone.
Bye-bye.
Okay, we're live. Can you tell us your name?
My name's Omkari.
Okay, hopefully everybody can hear, because of her condition she can't speak very loudly.
I can speak loudly, but it uses a lot of energy.
Yeah. Okay, so you had 2 of these shots. Tell us why you took them in the first place.
Well, like a lot of people, we were believing the narrative that we were supposed to help out our fellow citizens and, you know, be protected. And I kind of believe what they are saying about the spike protein or whatever that's supposed to help with, I don't know why I believe that, but I didn't know any better.
What were you doing work-wise? Did they make you take the shot as well?
Oh yeah, we were required by our employers to have the vaccines, otherwise we'd lose our jobs.
All right, so you went in and took your first vaccine or shot or whatever you want to call this thing. And what happened after the first one?
I didn't feel any effects. I got it done and they had us wait for like 15 minutes just to see if there was any kind of side effects, you know, like fainting or whatever, and I felt fine and just went on my day as usual.
Okay, so then you went back and had another one. Then what happened?
So after the second one, I immediately went on a trip to Alaska and had a great time. But I did notice like a month later, I had this horrible, lots of period blood coming out, and I had a lot of massive blood clots coming out of my period too, and it was so huge, and so much blood came out that I haven't even had a period since.
It's awful.
Yeah.
Frightening.
Yes.
Okay, so then what happened?
Well, that was in 2021, and then for my job, we got frequent tests in our nose. You know, we had to do self-tests where, you know, you swab yourself and then you do it's like a home test kind, but we kind of had to do that like maybe once every 3 days, and to make sure that no one had COVID. And if as soon as you got COVID, then you know, were taken off the job. And I did get COVID. I mean, I did test positive for COVID in I think the end of 2021. So what else?
Well, the condition that you're in now, you're in a lot of pain.
Yes.
And, you know, I can see you're struggling.
I am, yeah.
How did you get to that point, the point you're at now?
So it all started when I started getting vertigo in the middle of December of last year in 2023. And I just thought, great, I've got vertigo. Maybe I had it before, but it was due to an ear infection. But this time it wasn't. And I started going to a chiropractor, and my first adjustment caused me to start vomiting a lot. And I vomited so much that I ended up getting acid reflux as well. And one time I thought there was blood that came up, so I went to the ER that day. That was in January of this year of 2024. And all they did was just pump me full of drugs and sedatives, and I ended up just sleeping the next day for 24 hours. So I just thought, okay, fine, I'll try to recover. And I was seeing a chiropractor at the time who gave me the estimate that I'll get better by the 24th of February. And then I thought I was going to get better so much that I started putting in for more work. And the first day that I tried to get back to work on the 26th of February, I started dropping my tools. So I got numbness and tingling in my hands, and it just got worse and worse. All of a sudden the numbness shot up my arms and then down my whole entire torso. And now I don't have control of my bowels either.
So you can't work?
I haven't been able to work all year. This year so far.
And who's helping you?
I'm getting help by my mom. She had to come fly in from California just to help me out with my condition. I ended up in the ER again in March, March
You know
13th.
it's from the vaccines. Before you took the Modernas or the Pfizers, which ones were they again?
2 Modernas.
2 Modernas. Before you took Moderna, you were fine.
Yeah, I was fine. Yeah, I was fine until the middle of December last year. Yeah.
And do you feel this condition is getting worse?
It feels like it. I'd like to think that I'm recovering, but it's kind of hard to feel like you're recovering when my symptoms seem to be worse. I'm getting spasms, and they used to go away really quickly, but like within a minute, and now they're for longer, prolonged time and more frequent. And I've lost the use of my hands.
Have you reported this as a vaccine injury? Is it reported?
I have not, but my husband looked it up because I was diagnosed with transverse myelitis. He looked it up under VAERS, and there's like 593 other reported cases. So I'm not reported, but you know, they should probably have a lot higher number actually, I guess.
Will you ever have another vaccination again?
I don't ever want to have another vaccination again. Nothing. One of the treatments that the neurologist offered was to get a meningitis vaccine in order to go on their immunosuppressive therapies, because this transverse myelitis, according to them at the hospital, is an autoimmune disorder where my own blood cells are attacking my spinal cord and brain.
And they're saying that you should have a meningitis vaccine. You can't make this up.
I'm not making this up.
No, I know you're not. I said you can't. It's just ridiculous.
Well, they suggested that as one of the 3 treatments possible, but all 3 treatments had really adverse side effects. And the one that he wanted me to do required a meningitis vaccine first.
You did not take it?
No, I had an appointment, but with the pharmacist so that he could talk me into taking it, but I canceled the appointment.
Wise move.
I hope so.
Oh my goodness, you poor thing. I hope there's someone listening that may be able to help you. You're here in Seattle, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you I could see you in so much pain. Thank you for telling us the story, coming to the bus to do that. Is there anything else you want to say?
Had I known, I would not have taken those Moderna shots. I would have not taken this experimental gene therapy bullshit stuff. Yeah.
I'm so sorry for your condition you're in. I'm so sorry. Thank you for telling your story.
Sure.
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.